Do you like watching paint dry? Do you watch pornos for the story? Does he finally fix the cable? Do you like watching an endless parade of boringly identical rifles, looking for that one minuscule change like a game of Where's Waldo? Well, strap in, because we are going to explore the East German MPi AK-74 series. By the way, Waldo is busy making your mom squeal. The East German journey with a 5.45mm AK-74 rifle started in 1981 when it was decided to modernize elements of the East German Army to meet treaty agreements. A contract with the USSR was concluded in August 1981, which allowed the production of up to 1.5 million AK-74 rifles. It wasn't until 1984 that the first pre-production rifles emerged. Part of the holdup was the special steel that had to be developed for the barrel, as well as problems with chrome lining. Here is East German AK-74 serial number 1. This rifle, like most in this video, come from the vault at the Bundeswehr Museum in Dresden, Germany. I was lucky enough to be locked inside for a week in 2009. I remember 1984 very well. The Star Wars craze was still going, and all anybody wanted to talk about was the laser sight from the new Terminator movie. Society could use Terminator about now. Also from 1984 is the Cutaway Trainer, also serial number 1. This one comes from the Museum für Historische Wehrtechnik in Röthenbach an der Pegnitz, Germany, just outside Nuremberg. A very neat, very packed hobbyist-ran museum. A big thank you to Eric. 1985 would see the start of serial production, which would continue until the end of East Germany in 1990. We have 2 different rifles in identical configuration because why not? If you made it this far, you have nothing better to do anyway. Now please do me a solid and subscribe. The reason for the 2 rifles is simple. One was originally photographed in the vault in Dresden in 2009. The second, used example, was photographed in 2016 at the National Militaire Museum in Soest, Netherlands. I was there to photograph the Dutch Galils anyway, and they had a few DDR pieces from horse trading. Since I had to pay a flat fee to enter, why not photograph the other AKs they had? Not into weed, and the hookers were cheaper back home, so I might as well get my trip's worth. (1986 and 1987. More of the same as WISA continued to pump out rifles. An estimated 250,000 of these rifles were made before production ended in 1990. Are you still awake? I hope you haven't passed out from excitement. Let me know down in the comments. Someone lost a cleaning rod. Shitbag. I hope their team leader made them do push-ups. I used to be able to do 82 in 2 minutes. Then I got old and fat. A 1988 would see one of the few intentional parts changes, a new rear sight base. Investment cast like many other parts. After reunification, the new unified German government gave out AKs to whatever friendly nation would sign for them. This 1988 rifle is one of them, and was a training piece for the U.S. Army. 1988 MPi AKS-74N rifles are by far the most common AK-74 rifles in U.S. military service, mainly for familiarization training, but some units kept enough so that they could be used behind enemy lines if the Russians invaded. These photos were taken on my 90-minute lunch break. Gotta love the Army. Anyways, I have never had good luck photographing AKs outside, but these aren't bad. The bolt and bolt carrier group are separate photos, not to scale. I hope that was obvious, but you never know. The East Germans used what is commonly called the zigzag variation of the muzzle brake. Neat Soule factory proof mark. One of 32,000 barrels made that year. Like other AKs, major parts and final assembly was done at WISA, with Soule making barrels and other bits. Other subcontractors made parts as well. This 1989 rifle came out of the Balkans. Imported by a Swiss dealer, it was then sent to Germany as a deactivated collector's item. The PPW is the initials of the business that did the deactivation proofing. It was a wall hanger in my apartment for a while. Then I cut it into a parts kit and imported it to the US when I returned, where I built it as a semi-clone. Sold it a few years later when I got bored. Just like I got bored with your mom. Almost last, we have a neat pre-production rifle from 1984 that is wearing the last iteration of East German AK furniture. 1984 is too early for that to have appeared, so it was probably added later. I guess someone got bored. A good indication of the possible future that never happened. Finally, a poster of the K-90, which was the East German export designation for the rifle. The Soviet license prohibited export, so it was pointless. The Soviets being cockblocks was one of the reasons the Veigar series was created. I have a video on that. Check the end screen. After the full-sized rifle was in production, work began on a smaller carbine version for use by armored crewmen and others that needed a shorter, handier version. Rather than just copy the Soviet AKS-74U, the East Germans took a different approach and designed a carbine that used 93% of the same parts as the rifle. Here is one of the pre-production guns from 1985. I already used my 1985 Back to the Future joke in the last episode, sorry. Maybe in a couple months you guys will have forgotten. Given the factory model number 923, serial production would start the next year in 1986 and continue to the end. A better approach to the carbine problem than a lame oddball that uses almost all proprietary parts. The same approach would later be copied by the Russians, Romanians, and Bulgarians. 1987, we have two carbines that were used for photographs. The main shots were taken in Dresden. The barrel details were taken later at the National Firearms Center in Leeds, England. A big thank you to Jonathan Ferguson, the curator there. He remained gracious even after I almost used limey in his own country. It's hard to imagine, but this carbine was made the same year as the greatest movie of all time was released, Predator. I watched that movie almost endlessly. Anyways, with the importation of East German parts kits into the US, as well as the availability of a reproduction front sight base / gas block, someone asked me to photograph the barrel profile of the NK, so here we are. 1989 is the last year of NK that I have photographed. 10,000 NK barrels were made that year, along with 11,000 flash hiders. Production ended in 1990. When the East Germans acquired the license for the AK-74, a similar license was explored for the RPK-74. It was not taken any further, as it was too costly. One of the major sticking points was the East German inability to produce barrels longer than 500 millimeters, 90 millimeters short. 90 millimeters short is why your girl left you. Instead, they decided to make their own. These first two rifles from 1986, I'm not sure if these were part of that timeline or separate. They predate the 1987 dated concept rifles that are known to have seen field trials and are in the same configuration as East German 7.62 millimeter rifles that were designated as Z or Zielfernrohrer rifles in the export catalog, implying that they were meant for scoped use. The urban legend is such rifles were intended for border guard use, to shoot East Germans trying to escape to the west. The 1987 rifles saw field trials with the East German Fallschirmjägers as well as the Stasi. Notice that different parts were tested. By now it was called the LMG K-500 with a factory model number 924. PG-500 was an identical rifle that we will talk about later. The bipod appears to be a Soviet product that was bent, probably on a die for consistency. By 1989, the design was finalized and also used parts developed as part of the Veigar program. It was destined to begin production in 1990, but then the wall came down and that was it. This rifle is actually a PG-500, factory model number 925. PG is precision gewehr or precision rifle. During production of the LMG K-500, weapons that displayed superior accuracy during test firing were fitted with a 4x scope and designated as the PG model. The last weapon in this video. Next, we will show some of the accessories. If you made it this far, thank you. Some detail shots of the detached scope. Same Zeiss Gina that was used on earlier models. The rare 45-round magazine developed for the 545 LMG K-500. Eat your heart out, magazine collectors. The ZFK 4x25 scope was developed for the East German 545 weapons family. Bayonets that were developed and issued for the East German AK-74 types. Simply copies of the Soviet products. The orange-handled variants were the earlier version and replaced by the darker black handle. Do you remember the Rambo survival knife craze of the mid-80s? Well, the East Germans got in on it as well. They developed the KM or Kampfmesser 87 for use with the MPi AKS-74N, but they were never issued. Serial numbered versus serial numbered to the rifle. Now please consider watching some of my other videos, or I will wait until you are 6 months from retirement, reunify with you, then tell you that your decades of service don't qualify for full pension payments, then throw your life's work in the trash. Man, what a kick in the balls that must have been.